Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our panel discussion on efficiency meets sustainability, optimizing technical operations across the fleet. I'm Thomas Klenum, Executive Vice President at the Liberian Registry, and it is my honor to moderate this panel discussion. The maritime industry is at a crossroad. We are navigating complex landscape where operational efficiency and environmental responsibility are no longer competing priorities. They are deeply interconnected. With tightening regulation, rising fuel costs, and the urgent need to decarbonize, shipping companies must rethink how fleets are managed, maintained, and optimized. Today, we have an exceptional panel of leaders and innovators who brings diverse perspective. Our goal is to move beyond theory and discuss practical solutions, challenges, and opportunities that can shape the future of shipping. So let's dive in from our experts. The panelist today is Mr. Norman Schmiedl, CEO at Columbia Blue. And then, unfortunately for DeepSea Technologies, Dr. Konstantinos was not able to attend today due to flight issues. But we were very lucky that Mr. Angus Whiston, Growth Director at Sea Technologies, is able to step in and replace him. And then we have Mr. Tim Ponath, CEO at NSB Group. So more introduction, we can look at the website for their bio. So we would like to have as much time for the discussion here. So we start with the first topic, that is operational efficiency at fleet performance. And the objective is to explore how ship owners can achieve tangible efficiency gains while ensuring safe and reliable operations. So I will start with the first question to Norman, and that is how can ship owners balance the drive for operational efficiency with the practical realities of ship maintenance, crew competences, and reliability across a diverse fleet?
Thomas, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a real pleasure being here. And yeah, for us at Columbia, and in particular for me at Columbia Blue, because we are focusing mainly on cruise ships, super yachts, so we have actually much more sustainability and efficiency issues because we have a hotel department to operate. But I think to answer your question or to start the discussion is really, for me, everything starts and ends with the crew. So you can have fantastic systems on board, you can have great programs. We as CEOs, we can go on board and we can lead from the top. But if actually the guys who are doing the job on a daily basis are not really up to it and have not really understood the mission, then actually we fail. So that's for me basically the starting point. And unfortunately, when you look in the education programs of universities, when you look in training programs, I think efficiency management and sustainability is still not really high on the agenda, and that's maybe one of the reasons why we are still discussing in forums like this and like today, because actually efficiency creates dollars on the top line in the end, and it should be the benefit of everyone working on that jointly. And like I said, for me, it's like it starts and ends with the crew. And they need to be supported by fantastic systems, by technology and by procedures, but without them, we will lose that game.
Thank you very much, Norman. Tim, do you have anything to add from your perspective?
No, I think Norman has covered quite a lot, and it's, I do not want to repeat this, but those who are in the business and who run ships for years or for decades, following the implementation of additional rules and regulation and being compliant and being more efficient, it's an awareness issue, because at the end it's about the crew, right? You can provide them the best ship, the most efficient equipment. If they operate it wrongly, then you lose quite a lot on every voyage. And I think this is the biggest challenge to adapt, because investing in technology and upgrading systems and software, this is one. But for those who run ships or operate ships, take SEEMP, right? Nowadays, it's an important subject if it comes to EU ETS. But when it was implemented, honestly, what was it, right? You need to have it. You need to have documented it. But how aware was the crew? And depending on where they come from, what was the education, was this a subject? And now when we have seen IMO decision now, right, on net zero, so how do you change the mindset of your crew that this is one of the most important things, right? Sailing the vessel safe from A to B is one. Have no injuries is the second. Probably no groundings also. But then in addition, beside the maintenance and beside all the other things, rest and work hours, a lot of ports in Europe. And then you talk about efficiency, right? So, and this, you need to find a way together with your crew to get this all under one roof. And I think this is the biggest challenge.
Thank you, Tim. Angus, have you anything to share on this topic? Or?
No, I don't think so. I think just to reiterate that by and large, as you said, Norman, efficiency is good for all parties. And so, I mean, moving on probably to what we'll speak about a bit more as this panel goes on, then that affects your commercial, your ability to be commercially competitive, as well as the regulations, all at once. So it's sort of an end in its own right, really.
Thank you, Angus. Then a follow-up question there. Can you share any examples where data-driven insight or performance monitoring led to measurable cost or emission reductions? Maybe, Tim, if you can start on that one.
Yes. So I think there we are all sitting in the same boat. And looking back, when I started in shipping, I was just annoyed that everything was so manual, right? And when we started back in 2012 or something like this, taking online monitoring on board ships, so we have still the manual reporting, but the online monitoring, this at least reduces the risk that the data you get is not correct. So this is one. So you have a good database, and once you start this, then of course you can start to see the differences. And as we are talking as well about efficiency, and efficiencies as well involving costs, then of course it's the question, does it pay back? And we have proposed in the early 2010s efficiency measures, which had a very good market for a few ships, didn't make sense. And now the ships are 8 to 10 years older. What we proposed in 2012 was installed on last dry dock in 2025. So, and I think we will come on this point as well, but I think this is what we see nowadays, that if there's a commercial pressure, you find ways. So, and I think there are examples we know all. It's the paint, right? So initially when we talked about silicon, does it really help? But if you have a good monitoring, then you see the differences, especially over the 5 years period. Or take frequency control pumps, take all these measures, which hydrodynamic measures, which improves efficiency. So at the end, it all adds on the efficiency, which is nowadays so much needed, while in the past probably we said, well, 3%, what is 3%, right? But 3% and 3% and 5% makes the difference. So, yeah.
Thank you, Tim. Then moving on to digitalization and predictive technologies, and the objective of that round is to examine how digital tools, AI and analytic transform technical operation and decision making. So Tim, starting with you, what digital technologies can provide the greatest return in optimizing fleet efficiency? And a lead on is it, for example, AI-based voyage optimization, predictive maintenance, or digital twins, or is it something else?
Good one. Looking into the broader perspective, we are currently in a change of technology, I would say, with AI coming more and more in place. And I think this is the key at the very moment, that we can really make use out of it, supporting our crew on board and our employees at shore. Because what has happened in the past, regulations were increasing, compliance issues were increasing. We added more reporting because the owner asked for it, the client asked for it. So we were overwhelming the seafarers and the superintendents on board with at shore with reporting stuff, with all these things. So the time you can take care about the vessel was less and less, and the same in the office. So, and now you can build a bridge between all these softwares which you have implemented and the new technology of AI, because in the past we were all just adding software to the vessels or to the office, and we were just over flooding our employees with this. But now with AI, and especially with AI agents, you are talking about execution. So they are capable to help your stuff. And we started last year a few tests, and we have now 6, 7 AI agents up running in our back office operations. So, and this is really a game changer, because then you're not just adding another software which needs to be managed. No, you are starting with hybrid teams which have which are supporting with real value add to your other colleagues. And many say AI will we will have an issue with AI or with artificial intelligence because we will cut jobs. No, I don't think so. In a surrounding where we are lacking workforce, this can help, and it can improve quality, and the people you have in your office can focus on more higher valued tasks than things they are currently need to do. So this I see is the biggest chance for all of us if we implement the technology well, and for the next year we are looking to go on board with these applications, and then I think it will have an impact on efficiency.
Thank you, Tim. Angus, do you have anything to add to that question?
I think that, as Tim said in his previous answer, one of the key groundworks to making any of this work is getting a good data foundation. And the truth is that the vast majority of data out there, I mean, Tim, it sounds like you've actually focused on it in a big way. For the people who haven't yet, who consider it a turnkey solution or something that will just happen, digitalizing ships is extremely tough. And the data that comes out of them is by and large crap. That's actually where 90% of the global fleet is. And that's the groundwork to making any of this work.
Thank you, Norman. You have anything to add?
Yeah, well, maybe I do a little bit of an excursus to the wide fleet, to the cruise ships. So we have, because having worked for many, many years in commercial shipping and now being for 7 years on the leisure side, you can actually see that the commercial ships, they're really dragging behind. And why do they do that? Because it's the way how it's structured. I mean, if you're a tonnage provider and you charter your ships out, you're not really interested in the last tiny bit of efficiency when it comes, because it's the job of the charterer, right? But when you go in a cruise ship operation, and I just spoke last night with our technical team because I wanted to get some numbers. So to give you an idea, like an average 3,000 pax cruise ship, which is not a big one. The biggest ones, they have now 10,000 passengers, but we talk about 3,000. They have a hotel energy use per year of between 70 to 100 gigawatt hours. It's a huge amount of energy. We have in our operation AI tools, we have support systems, but we always had since the beginning superintendents who are only focusing on efficiency and energy improvement. So they get clear targets and they have to achieve them, together with the crew, of course. But the biggest saving we did in the last year, and this was something I didn't expect, we teamed up with a Danish company, AI driven. They just look at food waste. They have a camera which basically is analyzing on the conveyor belt when you put plates into the washing machine, how much food is left on the plate, and it actually analyzes the the grams, what kind of food it is, the value, and it basically tells you also how much you should actually put less on the plates, how much you should less produce, and how much you should less order. And now, after 6 months of operations, we actually reduced the waste 77%. And if you look on that, that's for us a big achievement, which nobody has foreseen. And we haven't even started to calculate the money and the CO2 we save, because we don't have to ship food from Germany, let's say, to the Caribbean. We have not basically calculated the amount of energy we save because we're not cooking the food. And then also we have to burn it, right? Or we have to grind it. So there's a huge potential in each and every tiny bit on a ship like a cruise vessel. I'm not sure that you can transfer that to the commercial ships to that scale, because there is always the difference between, the rule of Pareto. If you have achieved 80% saving, the effort now turns to reach the next 20% to 80. So what the commercial implications are there. But what I can see is there are a lot of areas which we may see not obvious now, but when you really look into them with good data analysis and with a dedicated team who's following up, you can achieve a lot of savings that you have never anticipated. So that's basically my take on that.
Yeah, thanks, Norman. That's a very interesting perspective, and it actually covers most of the second question here. So maybe question for Angus to elaborate on. How do you ensure that data collected across the fleet is translated into actionable insight rather than just more reporting? I think Norman covered it partly in his answer to the other question, but maybe you can share your perspective on this.
Yeah, so what I have seen a lot is that, so just a little background on my history in DeepSea. So we brought AI into the industry in an optimization capacity 7 or 8 years ago. And for the first 5 years, I and my colleagues have mostly been talking about technical stuff with technical people, about algorithms and about precisely how this data is going to make this impact. What we have realized, and what we now talk about mostly, is human adoption, visibility, baselines, tracking. Tech in a vacuum doesn't really do anything. I mean, it can do, but at the very end of the process, where it's all connected up, maybe in a sort of agentic AI setup that we might have in 10 years' time. Whereas now it's particularly in shipping, which is still a manual game. Then it is about putting human focus on these projects, whatever objective you're looking to achieve, putting a team around it, ensuring that everything is translated from technological speak into human speak. And the other part of this feedback loop is understanding where the baseline is for whatever it is you're trying to achieve, which can be very tricky, but that should be number one focus. In fact, I would say that if you haven't established what the baseline is for whatever project you're looking to achieve with data and digital technology, there's no point starting the project. Those are my thoughts these days after 7 years of making this stuff work.
Thank you, Angus. Tim,
maybe one to this. And I think this is the most important thing, right? When we talk about digitalization and the potential of AI and agentic AI, we should not miss the human being. And this is at least our experience, that you need to explain the why and the benefit, because other than that, your colleagues might be reluctant, because this is creating fear. So what is this? And if you're really digging into, and when we started a few years back, I was about to understand certain things, but now what they are now talking is just mind-blowing. So I stepped out of this. But now imagine, as the leaders, and you as the leaders, are always making up our mind how we can be more efficient, how we can run our company in the future, and what do we need to do to stay on the pace we need. Those who need to work with it should not be forgotten, on shore and as well on board of the vessels. And if you are there on this one for years as well, so then I guess that's I wouldn't call it steep, but tough learning curve. So changing mindset is one. We all experienced this over years. now changing mindset with a hybrid colleague. That's, let's say, the advanced changing mindset. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. Then moving on to another subject within this topic here, with the regulatory and environmental compliance. And the objective is to discuss strategies for meeting the tightening IMO and regional requirements such as CII, EXI, ETS, and FuelEU Maritime, and also what we learned last month with the IMO meeting that now postponed the decision for possible adoption of the net zero framework. So the question, Norman, I will start with you. How to align fleet technology operations to stay compliant with the evolving CII, ETS, and other environmental requirements while remaining commercial competitive?
That's a very good question. I mean, again, I give you now, and the cruise industry, I'm moving there now a bit, is really hit by that because the CII was designed not to measure cruise ships. So basically, we are hit so badly that even ships which are coming out of the yard tomorrow, they basically will have a deep red CII index in 5 years' time, simply because the mathematical formula of miles sailed and tons transported doesn't really work. But what I can say is we have at the moment about 6 new building projects, and all kind of technology you can imagine, which is new, is installed on either one of them or on the other. So we basically have one vessel where they will install a methanol fuel cell. It's supposed to be the holy grail, but it doesn't work. So it's like the technology adoption is sometimes very difficult to achieve because when you go into experimental technology, it's an experiment, right? And those who are taking the risk of putting it on their ships to try it out, they must have a certain need to do that. And when I speak with them, it's because they say, like, if you go on a cruise ship and do your holiday, it's perhaps, they would never say that in a boardroom. That's why I'm not commenting on it. But they say, like, it's a very unsustainable way of doing your holidays, right? You jump in a plane, you burn kerosene, you produce CO2, you go on a ship, you sail from A to B on AHFO, you pollute the ocean with noise. So there are a lot of aspects to it, and they are trying to minimize the impact. But when you look at technology today, especially propulsion technology, what you can optimize is very limited. It's actually only the way of you produce energy. And we heard before what is actually on the agenda. And we have ships that are methanol ready. They want to go green methanol, but where do you buy green methanol? And to what commercial viable price you actually can purchase it? It's not available yet. So sometimes I think the legislation is way ahead of what the industry actually is able to provide. And here we sometimes see an imbalance. And when I look to my commercial colleagues, they actually struggle with the same subjects, but on a much larger scale. Because if you operate a fleet of, let's say, 20, 25 container ships of one series, and they all have the same technical specification, and then you have 5 charterers who are interested in doing an upgrade, 5 not, 5 basically say, I don't care. How do you manage that as a fleet? So you have to take a decision on the owning side, which is sometimes not easy to do because you don't actually have the data and the clear return of invest on backing your decision. When you go to financiers, it's more a gut feeling, and that's why I think it's a very challenging situation, and especially in Europe, because when you look at the US, when you look in Asia, they take a different stand on it. And maybe there is a bit of a disadvantage in our area at the moment. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Norman. That's interesting perspective. And just a small comment on the CII. I think we all acknowledge that it is a very simplified matrix that is for the CII, and it may be focusing on the major ship types, whereas cruise vessel and other niche ship types may be unfairly penalized, and there's a review ongoing at the IMO to sort of try and enhance that matrix for niche ship types, but this is taking, unfortunately, a very long time. It was
2029, they say.
Yeah, now, I mean, it was supposed to be finalized 1st of January next year, but this is now postponed to mid-28, that review, but hopefully that will be improved going forward. But at the moment, the CRI is in principle only interim, because the G5 guidelines in that framework still have an interim status. But that was just a sort of side comments. But Tim, can you add on these questions from your perspective?
Yes, okay, cruise has, of course, his other, let's say, challenges if it comes to how you convince your passengers or your clients that they make a sustainable holiday. But I think we are all in the same boat if it comes about what to invest in, right? And you ask about the technical feasibility to be compliant, and at the end it should all make commercially sense. So is this, there's this nice English word, is this an oxymoron? So contradicting itself. And I think this is the biggest problem. So when we talk to our clients, and the ship, everyone knows you built for 25 years plus probably. So what is the right propulsion now? And as we heard previously, so is there an availability? And now with this IMO decision, are the front runners really still at the front, or are they suddenly at the back of the bus and trying to compensate the additional investments they did to be compliant for the target set? And even though it's a core value of your, let's say, corporate philosophy, it needs to be commercially manageable, right? And I think this is the biggest challenge we currently have. We have an aging fleet. We need to decide, and we talked to some of our clients where we provide new building supervision, and they just say we try to move the date of order backwards if we can because of the uncertainty. And I think this is what is currently driving us all around. You can, of course, younger vessels consume far less, and this we see with the younger vessels we have in the fleet also. But it's a challenge, and in Europe, this EU ETS and EU Fuel Maritime has started a certain dynamic, but now, is it just postponed, the IMO decision, by a year? Or is it considered dead? I don't know, but it's challenging. We are as well not certain what is the right technology to go into. What I find interesting in other committees I'm sitting in is that over all these years there was this pie chart, right? And let's say 2019 there was just a line where it says 0.0 and it says nuclear. So and now it's a quarter, right? So in these committees we are discussing about probably 25% of the future propulsion systems might be based on nuclear. And this is, of course, changing us in total, right? So we were trying to develop a combustion car which consumes 0.5 liters of diesel. Suddenly someone said, why not a battery? So it's a change of technology, right? And if you talk about nuclear with all the disadvantages, it's of course a totally different ballgame. And okay, we are in Germany, have a certain issue with nuclear, but other big ones in Asia, do it. And when the problem is getting bigger and bigger, and now we have the regulation, are we allowed to go with nuclear vessels to ports? But if the climate change is accelerating and we have solutions, I think they grab what is available to solve the problem. Maybe this was a wider extent, but I see we have still some minutes because our colleague is not with us.
No, well, thank you, Tim. That's very interesting what you bring into this discussion. I mean, with the nuclear power, I can add that it is now on the agenda at the IMO to update the nuclear code that is actually back from 1981. So to reflect the new technology for nuclear power, this is now in progress of updating the code to perhaps make nuclear propulsion viable for international shipping. Just a side remarks on that one. Angus, you have anything to comment on to this, I think?
Yes, I think it's a really fascinating question. And I mean, what you're really asking here, or what we really need to answer the question, is to understand very accurately what the relationship between regulations, specific regulations, as they are applied today or tomorrow or next year, and commercial competitiveness. Yeah. And you know, that is really the question. I mean, it's also a proxy for a load of other questions, which are the big questions in shipping, which until now have been pretty much impossible to answer, such as exactly when should I clean my hull, and exactly what the optimal route and speed are, for example. And look, there's a simple sort of unscientific way that we can answer it, which is that, well, today regulations are, by and large, all the regulations that you mentioned are by and large about fuel efficiency, and becoming more efficient will help you to comply with these regulations, and they will all have a very nice effect on your commercial, at least your sort of day-to-day TCE-based commercial competitiveness, because efficiency is good, right? And then there's also visibility that can be given to these things. So, for example, now our clients, instead of wanting the classic tools of your performance or technical team, which might be a fuel V curve or a power speed curve, you also have now a CII speed curve under any set of conditions. You know, this stuff is good. This stuff is helpful. But I think the really interesting thing to think about is, what is the right answer? So actually, how are these things related? And this is something that is, particularly in shipping, where data is so hard to come by, we have been a long way away from understanding for a long time. If we think about this in the bigger picture, how do you actually work out these relationships? Well, in order to work out what the relationship between commercial competitiveness and regulations on any given day will be, you also need to understand, let's just think operationally, you also need to understand exactly how your hull performs under any set of conditions. You need to understand the market pricing of cargo that day. You need to understand the availability of cargo locally that day. You need to understand the fuel price. You need to understand the weather very accurately. You then need to understand the CII limits, for example. And for example, in Norman's case, you also have to understand very precisely how your hotel load is going to interact with all of that. It's impossible. Or at least it has been impossible until kind of today, right? So this is a classic AI problem, and we're not there yet as an industry. In fact, no one is there. But if you think about AI as an incredible optimization tool, there is a right answer for this. You know, so to sort of wrap up, there is a right answer to how your commercial competitiveness and your compliance with regulations should interact, and what actions you need to take to make that completely optimal. And it's a data question. Now, I think that this is not a question just for shipping. It's a question for the whole world. And this is what AI will increasingly be able to give us as the tool that allows us to find the right line of best fit through this incredible multi-dimensional data cloud. It will affect every industry, and we will find the right answer. I think that shipping, though, is one of the, funnily, from being maybe quite a traditional industry when it comes to data and technology, might well leap right ahead. Why? Because the scale is so massive. If you find the right answer for this in your car and you save 3%, you manage to optimize 3%, you'll save a few €100 a year. Great. Probably quite a lot of time to work out how to do that. Probably not worth it on an individual basis. For a ship, for a fleet, 3% can be tens of billions. And so at the end of the day, what you're asking is actually the big question in shipping. Mm-hmm. It's not just regulations, it's also, as I said, what's your most optimal route, speed, when do you clean your hull? These are the things that right now, I mean, we are working on piece by piece through this list that I just mentioned. But in 10, 15 years, we'll have the answer to all of these things, I think.
Thank you, Angus. That's very valid comments. And Then we go to the last round here with alternative fuels and energy efficiency technologies. So the question is, what criteria do you use when deciding between investing in energy-saving devices versus preparing for alternative fuels? Norman, will you go first on that one?
Yeah, but I want to go back to Angus for 2 minutes.
That's fine.
Because I agree with what you just mentioned, but there is one big element missing, I think, in the whole conversation that we have about data and thresholds and discussions to take decisions. Because a lot of the data points, they're so, and now I use the word artificially, that people who actually are supposed to use the data to make decisions cannot use it anymore. This is the typical conversation I have with our safety team when they start to talk about LTIF. So now, if I'm basically looking at the company, how's my safety performance? Yes, for me this is a very important factor. But for the AB on board, actually doing the job, if we basically say our LTIF is X, Y, Z, he basically cannot relate to it. And your point of the saving on fuel, if you basically say you save 3% or 1% of fuel on that particular ship, on that particular voyage, it's very difficult for the people on board to comprehend what did I actually really save. And here I think there's also a lot of work to be done, because there is in our industry still an issue with sharing data and saying, yes, this chief engineer with his team, they have done this and that, and they have saved us $150,000 in this month. Perhaps there is the impression that he would like to get something of this 150,000 as a performance bonus. But here I think we have to really work as an industry to make sure that whatever this data is, it's actually properly used and explained, because I think that's a big weakness in the systems we have. And coming back to the discussion on the fuel, luckily we are not owners, we are managers, so it's not our decision to do that. But I can really see in our space that the ones who basically do the predictions for the next 10 to 25 years, they are lost, because when you look at the data over the last 5 years, we have more conflicts in the world than we ever had. It's in regions which we believe they would be safe, and they are not safe anymore. When it comes to the oil price, there is no real crystal ball to look into. I mean, just look at the gold. Who would have thought that the gold is above $3,000 per ounce now? Nobody anticipated that. So I think that the main decision point in the discussions we have is gut feeling. And it's like also to say, this is what I believe. And then you can be challenged on your belief, because nobody can challenge you on what is going to happen in 10 to 15 years. And we see on the cruise side of things, a lot of interest is in methanol and green methanol. Yeah. That's what I would say the holy grail. LNG was, but it's actually declining, and conventional fuel is, out. Totally, like it's boring to talk about, and it will always be there. It has to be there, but it's not. It doesn't come up in any conversations actually about new builds and the future.
For cruise,
yes.
Yeah.
Tim, from your perspective with your fleet, how do you see sort of alternative fuel versus energy-saving devices?
I think it both comes along together, right? So retrofits are too expensive in general. Probably for younger vessels, it's still feasible. For older, you need to see if you can find any devices which are increasing the deficiencies. And for new builds, we have methanol tanker with methanol propulsion or methanol dual fuel under construction. So for one of our clients, and okay, they burn the cargo. Hopefully the charterer does not recognize this, but so as I said already previously, it's a very difficult decision because it's about demand. I heard as well that some are positive about ammonia, but one other point which would bust this discussion is, do we connect the dots right? So what do I want to say with this? All along the supply chain, have we cut out all inefficiencies? And this is not just including the ship, right? This is the waiting time in front of ports. This is anything else. And I talked with a liner company about this a few years back, and we both agreed that it's probably 30%, right? From really A to B, the whole chain. So, and I think this is, I do not know how tough and who has the macro perspective on all of this, but probably more efficient than green methanol, which is not available. Sorry, I stole your time.
I'm not listening.
Thank you, Tim. I think that concludes our panel discussion. We are a little over time now, but thank you very much for sharing your perspective, Norman, Angus, and Tim. Please, a round of applause to the panelists.